Hello and welcome to UELtras on Ranks FC, the show that walks you through Europe's most exciting club competition, the Europa League, and its new baby brother, the Europa Conference League. I'm Jack Collins, and as we head into the last 8 of both of these competitions, the quarterfinals, I'm here to look at each game, a couple of key men for each side, and make a few predictions along the way. So without further ado, let's start with the Europa League. And let's start actually with Leipzig against Atalanta, which is maybe the most nicely balanced tie left in the competition. Leipzig's improvement under Domenico Tedesco has been absolutely remarkable. And as I said on Ranks on the podcast on Monday, I think that they are probably the second best side in Germany right now, despite being fourth in the Bundesliga. And frankly, in Christopher Nkunku, they have a top 5 form player in Europe this season. As Sam said before, this is a Ballon d'Or worthy campaign from him. 27 goals and 17 assists in 40 games so far, which is a ridiculous output. What I'm interested in here, though, is the fact that these are 2-3-5-2 shapes, meaning that wing-back battle is going to be absolutely key. And we know that Atalanta lost a couple of key wing-backs to injury and to the transfer window in January. This is my favourite tie of the round, I think, and it promises the most entertainment. Part of that is because Atalanta's injury crisis has left them brutally short going forward. And so they are so reliant on Ruslan Malinovsky creating moments of magic. He has kept Atalanta afloat in 2022, and he is one of the most exciting players to watch in Europe because ultimately he is one of the best long-range strikers of a ball I have ever seen. He's an incredible technician. He's also struggling for minutes right now. He's only played 45 minutes since coming back from the international break, gets subbed off at halftime against Napoli. He has a little bit of an injury problem. So I'm a bit concerned about how, if he doesn't feature heavily, how Atalanta create chances. But that said, this is Atalanta. They edged Leverkusen in the last round. They're currently a place above Leipzig in the Bundesliga, Leverkusen. And whilst Leipzig are the form team, you just can't write this Atalanta side off under Gasperini, especially with the second leg in Bergamo. Okay, West Ham, Lyon. And West Ham, I think, will feel like they're favourites to progress from what should be a competitive tie against Lyon after they beat Sevilla in the previous round. I think Sevilla, for most people, were second favourites in the competition, perhaps behind Barcelona, 6-time winners, the final in their own backyard. And West Ham got it done in that second leg against Sevilla, knocked out the competition stalwarts. It is very, very interesting. And there is a good buzz about West Ham. The fact that Aaron Cresswell and Jared Bowen are back from injury, they're able to throw everything at this tie. And Jared Bowen could be the key here. I think a lot of people say that obviously he is the top scorer and the top assist provider for West Ham so far this season. But what he offers, that dynamism, that goal threat, that poacher's instinct from the wide positions. He's risen from a rotation piece last season, obviously signing from Championship side Hull City, to one of the key players in this side. And his kind of, not renaissance, but his rise and emergence this season has meant a lot of people are saying he needs to be on the plane to Qatar for this England squad. I'm quite sure about that. But ultimately, he's going to be so crucial if West Ham are going to progress here, because Lyon are no pushovers. They are having an indifferent season in France where they find themselves 9th in Ligue 1. But ultimately, I think I watched that last round game against Porto, and it was incredibly hard fought, incredibly tough game between two wily European regulars. And I think that's what Lyon bring to this stage. The fact that they've been here before, they know all about what these kind of, occasions are about. They've managed to see off Man City in the latter stages of the Champions League in latter years. And also, I think the return of captain Moussa Dembele is quite interesting. I mean, obviously, he's been back since the start of the season, came back from that loan spell at Atletico Madrid, which just didn't go to plan. And his return to goal-scoring form, I think, after that Christmas period, means that they are always going to have that unbelievable threat in front of goal. And Moussa Dembele, obviously a player who's been linked to West Ham in the past. Look, behind him lie an exceptionally talented cast as well. And this 3 behind one of my favorites to watch in Europe, to be honest with you, despite the fact that it changes a little bit. Lucas Paqueta usually plays in the 10 in the hole. He's the kind of stalwart player in that mix. And on one side of him, Romain Favreau, signed from Brest, set piece specialist. He's kind of made that right-hand spot his own. On the left, though, one of a rotating cars, Houssem Aouar, once one of the most coveted players in Europe. Karl Toko Ekambi, who had such a wonderful AFCON with Cameroon, came back and has been absolutely flying as well. And then they signed Tete from Shakhtar Donetsk this month on loan. So plethora of options. And I suppose you'd pick one of those normally, but one of the players I'd like to just quickly point out and who could be massive in this, because this midfield battle is going to be absolutely huge. Souček and Rice on one side. Tanguy and Ndombele, obviously once of Tottenham, on the other, alongside Maxence Caqueret. And look, Lyon lost Bruno Guimaraes to Newcastle United in January, but they aren't too worried because Caqueret is still there. He is such a mix of energy and absolute class on the ball. He pressures and presses and harries, and he is an absolute nightmare to play against in those areas. But once he has the ball, he has the ability to slow it down, to pick up pass, to look around him and make things happen for this Lyon side. And there's a reason there's a lot of people very, very excited about Caqueret in France. It doesn't help. Well, it doesn't harm him that, for me, he looks like he's walked straight off the Bugsy Malone musical set from about 1920. That slick back hair, that classic look. But Caqueret is going to be key here. And this battle between him and Rice especially could be intriguing. First leg at the London Stadium. So expect West Ham to start on that front foot. But I do think this game promises goals, drama, and excitement. We'll go to Frankfurt against Barcelona. And look, Barcelona's form right now has made them runaway favourites to win this competition, and rightly so. But they will have to be wary of the threat that Frankfurt pose on the counter, because it's a threat that knocked out Barcelona's Liga counterparts Real Betis in the last round. And Frankfurt are incredibly comfortable out of possession. They don't mind not having the ball. They're quite happy to sit and wait for their moments. And they use that wide player, Filip Kostic, who's got a ridiculous goal against Betis. And of late, Daichi Kamada, also on the score sheet, to hurt teams in transition. And one of the kind of hallmarks of this side is energy. And the fact that Jesper Lindstrom is being used as a 10, sometimes as a 9. He feels like a player who is a box-to-box midfielder, a Conor Gallagher kind of player in some ways. And all action, 100 miles an hour. He sprints. He absolutely hammers the ball. Every strike is an absolute bullet. Every set piece is an absolute bullet. He is playing as this kind of pressing number 10, 9.5. And what he does is he sets the tone for Frankfurt. He sets that press. And Barcelona have been unsettled in this competition before. Obviously, we saw that 0-0 at Nou Camp against Galatasaray. And the fact that Galatasaray went 1-0 up in the second leg. Obviously, they went on to lose the game, but you do put Barcelona under that pressure, and there is always a chance you're going to get something out of it. This team is brilliant, and I love watching them, and Xavi has really turned them into something special, but they are not infallible. They are not flawless, and I expect Frankfurt to really get at them in this first leg and get that press, not in terms of having possession, still expect that 80% Barcelona possession, but ultimately Frankfurt to really have a go in terms of the press. And with all that said, Barcelona did face down a perhaps even more impressive rearguard, that of Sevilla, in La Liga this weekend. And in Ousmane Dembele and Pedri, they have players who excel at picking locks. And then on front of that, you have this searing pace and devilish guile of a front three, which can include Adama Traore, Ferran Torres, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. They should be able to see off their German adversaries by the form book, because ultimately Frankfurt are struggling for form. I just want to point out Ousmane Dembele. There's been a lot of chat about Pedri recently because Pedri has been absolutely unbelievable. But the fact that Ousmane Dembele has come back from this period where he was frozen out, and he's come back in the kind of form we haven't seen since he exploded into life at Borussia Dortmund, and basically the kind of form that made Barcelona shell out such an amount of money for him to come in and replace Neymar. He is the ultimate lockpick. And when Barca needed someone recently, he's been the man that has stepped up. A couple of real man of the match performances, including one against Sevilla. I think they gave it to Pedri in the end, but Ousmane Dembele was definitely the best player on the park. These contract negotiations continue. There's a talk of PSG wanting him, of Liverpool wanting him. In this form, everyone should want him, but he is a joy to watch in full flight, almost impossible to stop. And if you've got your eyes glued to one player in this game, I guarantee it's probably going to be Ousmane Dembele. And finally, in the Europa League, Braga against Rangers, the two lowest ranked sides left in the competition, I would say, but both with big scalps under their belts. Rangers already knocked out Borussia Dortmund. Braga knocked out Monaco very nicely in the last round as well, very comfortably, because this is a very young Braga squad. I said so last time. I thought that was going to be really exciting. Braga managed it really well, and they're led by captain Ricardo Horta, who is on the radars of Portugal's biggest clubs. He is captain, talisman, leader, legend, nearly 30 goal contributions from just over 40 appearances across all competitions this season. And he plays as kind of an inverted winger behind the striker in this setup for Braga, almost in the same way that Thomas Tuchel sets up his front three, with one player as a kind of focal point, and then two either side of him tucked in to allow wingbacks to fly forward. Horta plays as one of those. He's a beautiful set piece taker. He is a player who always seems to have that little moment of time on the ball. He seems to be able to work that moment for a shot. His decision making is exceptional, and he's been on the radars for a few big clubs for quite a while now. He's always stayed at Braga, the club where he really made that ascendancy. He turned down a massive multi-million-pound offer to go to Atlanta United in MLS last summer. But I'm really intrigued as to what happens next with him, and if he can continue to inspire this Braga side, because look, ultimately Rangers rode their luck a little bit in the second leg against Red Star, but in the kind of whole scheme of things, let's have it right, they've deserved to win both knockout ties so far on balance. And these games, they're a little bit basketball-y, a little bit end-to-end, seem to suit Van Bronckhorst's side. And that's what they're getting a little bit as more underdogs in Europe. Perhaps less so against Red Star, but Red Star were always going to come out and have a go, especially after what happened in that first leg. And Rangers kind of exploited that space. That space opens up for the likes of Ryan Kent, who has been absolutely unbelievable. My player of the knockout stages so far. He absolutely tore Dortmund apart in the playoff round, winning 2 penalties. He was a difference in that Red Star game as well. He got the goal away from home that sealed the deal. And he's a little bit like watching Jack Grealish cutting off that left wing. I'd imagine that he is the key battle here. And I expect Braga to double up on him, playing a right wing back and a right centre back in order to try and nullify that threat, which makes it interesting in terms of how they cover for that doubling up across the rest of the field. But Kent has been unbelievable. And Aaron Ramsey, obviously added to the squad in January, knows all about high pressure games, knows what it's like at the sharp end of these competitions. I wonder if that experience has been brought in to try and guide some of these younger players over. But I think that whilst it might be the lowest caliber tie of the lot, it also might be the most exciting, this one. Okay, let's get on to the Europa Conference League, and let's start with Feyenoord against Slavia Prague, who met twice in the group stages. Two sides that know each other already. 2-1 win for the Dutch side at home meant they topped the group. It was a 2-2 draw played out in the reverse fixture back in Prague. What that means is not only do we know that they're pretty well matched, but we also know that they know each other already, which should make for an even, if slightly perhaps cagey encounter. Now, Slavia have made it to the quarterfinals of European competition 3 times in 4 years now, with Europa League quarterfinal losses in both 2019 and 2021. And they will be desperate to break through that glass ceiling at the 3rd time of asking. But if they're going to do so, they're going to need to fare better on their travels than they did in their last 16 game, where they squeezed through against Lax. Now, that might be a bit harsh, because they won by 2 clear goals. They won 7-5 on aggregate. And 2 of these last goals came in the last minute. But they did ship 4 to inferior opposition, and they had 2 men sent off, which is going to be interesting in terms of these matchups. They will look to Peter Olejinka, who has scored 8 goals in European competitions for Slavia from that left wing spot. He has a really good understanding with the centre forward and countryman Yura Saw, and he looks to get in behind, and I will look to get in behind this Feyenoord back line. He's this hybrid kind of winger striker. He wears the number 9 shirt from this left wing position. He's a wonderful reader of the game. He drifts beautifully, picking up spaces in and around the box. And I think he's going to be key if Slavia are going to hurt Feyenoord. Feyenoord will look, on the other hand, to explore the absences of those 2 players who are suspended from the last leg, but also a spate of injuries that have hurt Slavia. There's also that defensive instability away from home. They'll know that a trip in the reverse fixture to Snowball will be no easy task. But interesting, I think it could be Luis Sinisterra and Reece Nelson here that could be the key, especially given Slavia's serious lack of options at fullback. And it's Sinisterra who has been exceptional for Feyenoord this year. Sensational to watch. Colombian right winger, scores a lot of goals and into double figures for the season for goal contributions. He's a massive threat in transition. He's got the speed, the trickery, that eye for goal, but also the fact that he's not massively been rolled out in this competition too much so far. Now we're getting to the sharp end. Feyenoord is starting to drop him in, and I think he could cause huge problems. I expect a home win in the first leg, but the question might be by how many if Feyenoord are actually going to progress out of this tie. Okay, Marseille, PAOK, and Marseille will come in as heavy favourites here. But the Greek Giants will know that if they can come out of the first leg in touching distance, that they are capable of creating magic at the Tumba at home. The atmosphere there is absolutely outrageous. We've seen turnovers in Europe already so far by PAOK against teams who'd say a higher calibre. But that is going to be easier said than done. This is the team second in Ligue 1 and only French side ever to have lifted the Champions League. It's interesting because PAOK have got this far through a stern rearguard and basically powers of endurance. They've had 14 games in this competition since entering in the knockout rounds, the playoff rounds, before those group stages. In those 14 games, they've only scored 19 goals. But they find themselves in a quarterfinal all the same. And they're perhaps summed up by Vieirinha, who is their 36-year-old captain, the old boy, an absolute warhorse of a player. Used to be a winger, sometimes still plays there, but mostly now a fullback. Still a beautiful crosser of the ball. And for my money, scored the goal of the tournament so far in the playoff round against Midtjylland. He's going to have a massive task on his hands. He's going to have to deal with the threat of Amine Harit or Dimitri Payet. So there's going to be something here for him to have to do. It's a massive task. If PAOK are going to get something out of this, they need to stay in touching distance. And Marseille's home record in Europe is impressive, but their goal scoring rate isn't that high. They only scored more than once a couple of times in the recent couple of years in Europe. That said, they have an attacking cast of Dimitri Payet, Arkadiusz Milik, Amine Harit, Cedric Bakambu, Bamba Dieng, Cengiz Under, and Conrad de la Fuente. So you'd imagine it might be there, but so much might hang here on Arkadiusz Milik because he scored 8 goals in his last 6 games for Marseille. He's found form late in this season, but there is this question of whether he will be injured. He went off injured for Poland in the international break. They said 10 days. About 10 days ago, there are massive questions over whether Milik will be fit, and it might hinge on quite how he works. Obviously, Bakambu can play in that role, but Bamba Dieng can play in that role as well. But Milik has found that form, and his goals have been a big part of Marseille's rise back to second in Liga. It hasn't always been easy for him at Marseille, but it does feel like a good patch, and I'm questioning whether without him, they will feel a little bit loose. Bodø Glimt against Roma. They meet again. Obviously, Bodø Glimt pulled out one of the shock results of this season when these two met in the group stages, beating the Italian giants 6-1. Look, Mourinho after that game admitted he had over-rotated, but don't take that to mean that even at full strength, this will be easy. Glimt are back-to-back Norwegian champions and have already knocked out a very good Celtic side and a resurgent AZ Alkmaar in this knockout round. They will be confident of being anybody over 2 legs. The first leg is in the Arctic Circle. At that place, it was 6-1 on an all-weather pitch. It is not a place for anybody to go and visit. And never mind win. And Roma will go there already scarred. And one of the men that scarred them was Ola Solbakken. He might be the key here. He bagged 3 times against Roma in the group stages, once at the Olympico, twice at Bodø Glimt. And he likes this game. He's the second top scorer in the competition behind opposite number Tammy Abraham. He was absolutely brilliant in both legs against Celtic, a goal and assist across the tie. And he scored the winner against AZ in the first leg as well. But with all that said, on paper, Mourinho's men are probably the best side left in this competition for my money. And he in particular will relish the idea of not only bringing silverware back to the Olympico, but also adding a new trophy to his own personal cabinet. He'll look at this as a revenge mission. And Roma are in a far better place than they were when they played Bodø in those group stages. And also probably taking the competition far more seriously at this point. You've seen they've not lost in 10 in Serie A. They've had that massive win over Lazio in the derby, and they've just kept rolling. They just keep feeling like they're in a good place. That front 3 of Lorenzo Pellegrini, Henrik Mkhitaryan, and Tammy Abraham is so key. And that Tammy Abraham is now in such fine form. He is loving life in the Italian capital. He is top scorer in this competition. He is set a record for goals in a debut season for Roma. He's the top scoring Englishman across all competitions in the top 5 leagues across Europe, the focal point of all Roma's attacking play. And he just looks so happy. He's spoken about how happy he is in Rome, about how he loves life there. And he just looks like a man who you can rely on at the moment. And Roma are going to have to, if they're going to have to squeeze through this one. Finally, PSV against Leicester, and probably the headline tie of the quarterfinal round in the Europa Conference League. These two teams come into the game well matched in terms of personnel and ability, I would say, but off the back of two very different seasons. PSV are flying. They're locked in a title tussle with Ajax in the Netherlands, with Roger Schmidt's side producing a scintillating run of form since the turn of the year to creep right up on the coattails of their eternal rivals. And a treble is still very much a possibility. A couple of points, 4, I think it is, behind in the Eredivisie. They've got a cup final to play against Ajax, and they're very much in this competition. They've done this kind of run of form through a barrage of goals spread out between their forward line. Cody Gakpo, Noni Madueke, Aaron Zahavi, Mario Götze, Joey Veerman, brought in January, already hit the ground running. Carlos Vinicius, Ritsu Doan, and more have all been on the score sheet recently, as PSV have netted time and time again. But it's Gakpo that stands out for me. This has been a true breakout season. He's gone over the 20 mark for goals and assists so far. He's a long stride, exciting, dynamic wide forward who has this productivity rate that just seems like he's always going to cause defenders problems. He's fast, he's direct, he's physical. There feels like he might make a jump next season, but this has been a huge breakout of him, and he's going to be absolutely crucial if they're going to punish this Leicester defensive line, which has been leaky. And look, that's the reason why Leicester have struggled for any sort of consistency. They sit firmly mid-table in the Premier League, meaning that winning this competition is their only real hope of qualifying again for Europe next season. Their defensive issues have been, well, quite obvious for everyone to see. They're incredibly inconsistent, but perhaps that's about to stop, because after 6 months out with a broken leg, Wesley Fofana has returned for Leicester, and alongside vice-captain Johnny Evans, that partnership should start to heal the gaping wounds which have appeared this season in their back line. I'm going to just quickly talk about a player who's been a bright spark in a dismal campaign for Leicester, and that's Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. He's probably been my player of the season in terms of a Leicester capacity. He plays in a sort of attacking midfield role, but he drifts off to the left to make space for James Maddison to cut in from the right. He's become a mainstay in this midfield. He has a really good relationship and a kind of link-up play with Yuri Tielemans, and he has a knack for finding space in really useful areas, drafting between the lines and making things happen. So he is going to be the man who I'm looking to for Leicester to kind of inspire this. He could be like, right, this season hasn't been great. I've come through. I want to make this something to remember. Dewsbury-Hall will almost certainly have something to say, and obviously has enjoyed his time in this competition, one of the ones that helped him launch into that Leicester side. All of that basically means that this is a beautifully balanced tie, as well as being the biggest name clash and probably the one not to miss across the course of the Conference League. That's it for today here on UELtras. Thank you so much for watching as ever. Make sure you go and hit that subscribe button and share this to anyone else you think might be interested in the ins and outs of the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. We'll be back before the second legs. Thanks for watching.